In this last lesson on data handling, we are going to learn how to plot the data or use the data in the table and draw it or plot it on a line graph. Previously, we learned about a bar graph. A line graph is different, and I'm going to show you how it's different. And we are going to learn how we take the data and put it again on a y-axis and an x-axis to create a line graph. So the data that we have is how much Ms. Gonzalez spends on stationery, which are your pens and pencils and rulers and all of those things that we need for our class. How much Ms. Gonzalez spends on stationery every month. So the first column, I have the month. January, February, March, April, and May. And then the second column, it says money spent. I've done it in dollars. So let's pretend Ms. Gonzalez spent $40 in January, 10 in February, 20 in March, 60 in April, and $50 in May. We are going to take this information and we are going to plot it on a graph. Remember, the first thing that you need to do when plotting data on a graph, any graph, a line graph or a bar graph, is we have to write the title. And the title is going to be how much money Ms. Gonzalez spends on stationery every month. Remember, it is our title or our heading, so we need to make sure that it's underlined with a ruler so it's neat and tidy. Okay, so we have our heading now, and now we need to find out what is going to be on our x-axis and our y-axis. Remember, the y-axis is the long one going down, the vertical one, because a y has a tail, so that means it's this long one going down. And this over here is our x-axis. The first column, like Ms. Gonzalez said, is most of the time going to be your x-axis. So at the bottom here, I need to put the months. The months go at the bottom here, and the months I have are January, February, March, April, and May. Make sure that your lines at the bottom here are big enough that you can fit all the months and they're not overlapping or that you cannot see them nicely. Then on the y-axis is the second box, and it's the money spent. So I have to remember, look at the amounts very carefully so I can decide how I'm going to move up the side of my y-axis. It can't be any number. I can't just put a 10 because I have a 10 here and a 20, and because I don't have a 30 I'm just going to skip it. That's not how line graphs work. We have to go up the side in order. So I can see that all of the amounts given in the money spent are multiples of 10. So I'm going to use multiples of 10 to go up my y-axis. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and 70. Right. Now that I have got my y-axis and my x-axis ready, now I can start plotting my data. Remember, we are doing a line graph and not a bar graph. A line graph is different from a bar graph because it has lines and not bars. I'm going to show you how we do it. So in January, Ms. Gonzalez spent $40. So I forgot to write on the side here, money spent, and I'm going to put it in dollars on the side. Okay, in January, Ms. Gonzalez spent $40. January is over here, $40 over here. Again, I'm going to use my ruler so that it's easy for me to see. January goes all the way up here, and I'm just going to put a dot or a point. I'm not drawing a bar, I'm just putting a dot or a point. And I'm going to do the same for February, $10. So again, I put my finger on February, I put my ruler on 10, and I go all the way up, and I put another dot. February was 10. March, $20. So I'm going to put my ruler on 20 over here, and my bottom here on my x-axis is March. I go all the way up, and I'm going to just put a dot over there by March. April, $60. So I go put my ruler here on $60. and I'm on April, so I'm going to go all the way up, very carefully making sure it's straight, and I'm going to put a dot over there. And the last one, May, was $50, so I'm going to put my ruler again on 50, my finger on May, go all the way up nicely, straight, 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 and put a dot over there. So now I have all these dots already drawn on my paper, on my piece of paper, and I now need to join them together with a ruler. You must be very careful not to skip any dots. You have to go in the order. So my first dot for January is here, my second dot for February is there, so I'm going to take a line, my ruler, and I'm going to join those dots together. Then I have from February to March, there's my dot over there, so I'm going to join them together. March to April, my dot's up there, so I'm going to use a ruler to draw it together. And lastly, May is over there, so I'm going to use my ruler to join them together. And this is our line graph. It helps us to see how, in a quick instant, how much we spent in each month. And just from looking at this, I can see that I spent the most over here, and that month was April. So Miss Gonzalez spent the most amount of stationery in April. And just by looking at this graph, I can see the shortest or smallest point is over here. So in February, Miss Gonzalez spent the least amount on stationery. And that is how you would draw a line graph. Remember that you need to put your X and your Y axis, your X and your Y axis. Your Y axis has to increase in the same number. So if you're counting in tens, it must be tens. If you're counting in fives, it must be fives. You can't skip any out. Just because I don't have a 30 here doesn't mean that I'm going to skip 30 on my Y axis. We have to keep it the same. If you understand this now, please pause the video and try this example by yourself on your whiteboard. If you don't understand, please watch the video again. In this example, it says you need to use the data to plot a line graph on your whiteboard. This table represents how much money Mrs. Swanepoel spends preparing for electives. Again, we have months, which is going to be our x-axis, and the money spent is our y-axis. And you are on your whiteboard going to try and plot this line graph using this data.